In March 2011, a devastating earthquake and tsunami caused a meltdown at Japan's Fukushima nuclear power plant, prompting worldwide panic about radioactive fallout. Over 100 similar reactors in the US, some in earthquake zones or close to major cities, are now reaching the end of their working lives. Yet the nuclear industry wants to keep them running. Is America heading straight for nuclear catastrophe?
On March 10, 2011, the highest-ranking members of the NRC, or Nuclear Regulatory Commission, gathered in Washington to make an important decision.
Would Commissioner Ossendorf please affirm your votes?
Aye.
In a unanimous vote, the NRC approves a 20-year license extension for the controversial Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant. Just hours later in Japan, a plant with the exact same nuclear reactor design will face a catastrophic event. A devastating earthquake, followed by a tsunami with waves twice as high as the seawall around the plant, floods out the emergency generators. President Obama warns Americans in Japan to evacuate the danger zone.
Called for an evacuation of American citizens who are within 50 miles of the plant.
Without emergency power, engineers can't keep the reactors cool. Gas explosions destroy units 1, 2, 3, and 4. Radiation levels at the plant are so high that it will take months to get the situation under control. Back in Washington, the chairman of the NRC, Gregory Yatzko, put the agency on high alert.
First and foremost, when there was the earthquake, the agency activated its emergency response center. We were concerned about the potential for a tsunami to hit the plants on the west coast of the United States.
Yatzko also ordered an immediate safety review of all U.S. plants.
Here in the United States, we have an obligation to the American people to undertake a systematic and methodical review of the safety of our own domestic nuclear facilities.
There are 104 nuclear plants in the United States, originally licensed to operate for 40 years. Now, many are reaching the end of their approved lifespan, and the companies that operate them are looking to the NRC to relicense them for another 20 years. Our reporting has uncovered serious problems with NRC oversight that could be putting over 100 million Americans who live near nuclear plants at risk. This siren tests the emergency alert system in the town surrounding the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant. A series of dramatic equipment failures at the plant have put Vermonters on edge. The most dramatic of which was the collapse of a cooling tower in 2007.
Spewing cooling water all over the backyard. It wasn't radioactive, but that wasn't the point. The point was it's a component of a nuclear power plant that was allowed to degrade to the degree where it actually fell down. And that one picture went viral around this state, and almost overnight the support that this company had received since the day they bought the plant in 2002 evaporated.
Bob Stannard, a former state legislator, says he was once pro-nuke, but changed his mind after seeing these photos. He's now a lobbyist for a local advocacy group.
A corporation that would allow this to happen to a plant when they're under the microscope and the white-hot light of review, not only from the NRC, but from the state of Vermont. I went to my wife and said, I've got to go back to lobbying. I owe it to my grandchildren who weren't born at that time to do what I can to close this plant down.
This picture, we believe, was taken by an employee of Vermont Yankee and was smuggled out to a nuclear safety advocate who released it to the public.
Bob Audette, a longtime reporter with the Brattleboro Reformer, says the company that runs the power plant, Entergy, initially hid the extent of the damage from the public, raising questions about their operating procedures.
They're doing a cost-benefit analysis. So they're saying, how far can we push this machine? How far can we push this pipe before we replace it, this steam valve, this turbine? How long can the steam dryer last? Should we replace it ahead of time, or can we push it even farther just to save money?
And the cooling tower collapse wasn't the only serious equipment failure, according to Vermont's Attorney General William Sorrell. In 2004, poor maintenance on one of the plant's electrical systems caused a serious fire in the turbine building, forcing the plant into emergency shutdown. Then, in 2009, in a series of state hearings on the condition of the plant, Vermont officials asked Entergy if underground pipes at the plant could be leaking radioactively contaminated water. Time after time, Entergy executives testified that they had no underground pipes.
They were on record repeatedly as denying the existence of underground pipes carrying radioactive materials.
But in January of 2010, water contaminated with radioactive tritium was found leaking from these underground pipes. Entergy backtracked, telling Vermont's Attorney General that while they didn't have underground pipes, they did have a network of buried pipes.
Sorry, we've said this to you in the past, including under oath, but that was incorrect information, misleading information, and sorry.
Attorney General Sorrell opened up a 17-month investigation. In a deposition videotaped for a later lawsuit, former Executive Vice President Curtis A. Baer admitted that the company misled state officials.
Testimony that was given pursuant to underground and below surface pipes that could have been more accurate. Just a general management breakdown is how I would describe it.
Shame on a multi-billion-dollar-a-year corporation if they cannot articulate clearly. And if they can't, that doesn't mean that you give them a pass and say, oh, mistake on your part. I mean, you want absolute credibility and clarity from those that operate nuclear power plants.
Vermont Yankee had to remove and treat more than 300,000 gallons of radioactively contaminated water. By now, the state's governor, attorney general, and legislature joined the groundswell against relicensing.
If its board of directors and its management were thoroughly infiltrated by anti-nuclear activists, I do not believe they could have done a better job in destroying their own case.
But under U.S. law, only the NRC can decide if a plant is safe. And on the eve of the Fukushima disaster, the NRC approved Vermont Yankee's 20-year license extension.
Well, people don't trust the NRC. They think it's the lapdog of the industry, that basically it's there to affirm everything the industry does, and it's too cozy with the industry.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. The NRC initially developed an extensive inspection regimen to ensure that aging plants were safe to operate an additional 20 years. But those inspections went awry with the very first nuclear plant that came up for relicensing, Yankee Row in Massachusetts.
Over the 30 years of its operation, the reactor vessel has become so embrittled that the vessel is in danger of rupturing. This would most likely result in a large release of radiation to the environment.
The NRC's inspections found that the plant's reactor vessel was in need of immediate replacement. Unwilling to spend the money, the company decided to shut the plant down, even before its original license had expired.
That was an eye-opener for the nuclear industry. You seek a 20-year extension to your facility, and you end up having to shut down 8 years early.
David Lochbaum, a nuclear engineer with the Union of Concerned Scientists, says that when the next plant came up for relicensing, the industry successfully lobbied to narrow the requirements.
In 1995, the NRC revised its license renewal process to narrow the focus. That was the lesson learned from Yankee Row. We'll just stop looking, and because we're not looking, we cannot find any more of those problems.
The NRC's revised regulations for relicensing would now focus only on the aging management plans provided by the utility itself. It's striking what the NRC does not review. No thorough inspections of the infrastructure, no review of new earthquake hazards, and no reevaluation of emergency plans.
We never look, so therefore we never catch those shortcomings and fix them.
Since then, 71 nuclear plants have applied for relicensing, and every single one has been approved. NRC Chairman Gregory Yatsko insists that the streamlined standards don't put the public at risk.
Our job is to make sure that plants are safe today, tomorrow, and every day that they have a license to operate. So if there's a problem with a particular facility, it's our job to make sure they address that problem now, not wait until license renewal.
But NRC inspectors who are stationed in plants are only able to examine about 5 to 10% of plant systems each year. And several close calls have raised questions as to the adequacy of this oversight. At the Byron plant in Illinois, a critical pipe which cools the plant was allowed to corrode to such a degree that it created an emergency.
They started to peel away the rust off the pipe, and the pipe just burst. It was done. You know, the only thing holding that together was the rust, and so it burst. As a result of the loss of the water, that forced the shutdown of a nuclear power plant. That doesn't happen every day.
George Mully, a 26-year veteran of the NRC Inspector General's office, investigated the Byron emergency. He says corrosion like this doesn't happen overnight. Month after month, plant engineers lowered the acceptable thickness of the pipe, eventually claiming that a paper-thin pipe would be safe to operate.
0.03. Now, 0.03 is 3/100ths of an inch. I don't know how you can get a pipe wall that thin. It's like 7 or 8 sheets of paper. I mean, you are talking paper thin. And this is carrying water under pressure used to cool a power plant.
According to Mully, the NRC should have caught the problem much earlier.
There's still an attitude in the agency. I trust the licensee.
Mully says this is a widespread problem at the NRC.
I had a manager tell me once on an investigation, I said, you didn't check. This guy was not telling you the truth. You didn't check what he told you. Why is that? Oh, I would never check what a licensee tells me. Well, why is that? Because it's against regulations for licensees to lie to me.
In his final report to Congress, Mully criticized the NRC's oversight of the Byron plant. But instead of sending on his findings, his superiors rewrote the report to lay the blame on the utility and kept it from being made public. We asked Chairman Yatsko about the Byron incident.
I wouldn't necessarily characterize with the characterization that the pipe burst. As I said, we have pipes that...
Well, a worker was scraping rust off of it, and it just scraped right through the rust.
Well, again, I think we have a very robust program here to address these issues. There are going to be challenges with corrosion and with other degradation of piping systems.
You would hope that at least the Fukushima incident said, you know what, you don't like to think about it, but big things can happen. And you've got to act and you've got to regulate as if big things can happen.
In California, one of the most seismically active zones in the world, many think it's only a matter of time until the big one.
This may be the facility that, if something does go wrong, could be our Fukushima. Not because of a tsunami, but because of a massive earthquake that could cause catastrophic damage.
State Senator Sam Blakesley represents the district that includes the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant, considered the most seismically dangerous in the country.
Now, if we're talking about something over a magnitude 7...
Blakesley knows the devastating power of earthquakes better than most. He has a PhD in earthquake studies, and he's been urging the NRC to take seismic threats more seriously. In 2008, he became even more alarmed when a seismologist with the U.S. Geological Survey discovered a new earthquake fault.
Looking offshore, I found a number of small earthquakes that previously had looked kind of scattered, actually lined up along a line that ran basically right along the coastline near the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant.
Jean Hardebeck's research points to a dangerous possibility. She says that the newly discovered shoreline fault could combine with another fault called the Hasgri to create a powerful earthquake right at the plant. A similar scenario surprised Japanese seismologists at Fukushima. But the owners of Diablo Canyon, Pacific Gas and Electric, say there's nothing to worry about. They say Hardebeck's analysis is flawed and the plant can operate safely for years.